السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in knowledge, to benefit us from that which He has taught us, and to grant us success in everything that we do, and to grant us acceptance from Him. Allahumma ameen. As we all know that today, inshaAllah ta'ala, our second day in this conference, or this seminar, or this crash course, whatever you want to call it, of a sip of knowledge, inshaAllah ta'ala, we will deal briefly with regards to the science of Tafseer. Before we get into the actual class, first we like to apologize for the late start. We had some technical difficulties. We were trying to fix some problems with the PowerPoint or the display. But inshallah ta'ala, it was a fursa, a chance for those who are a little late to reach, inshallah ta'ala. And so we commence, inshallah ta'ala, as we said, with regards to a brief presentation on the science of Tafseer. Now, even if this presentation gets long, an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, it's still going to be brief. Right? It's still going to be brief in compared to what's available and what's out there to learn with regards to Tafseer and with regards to the sciences of Tafseer. Much less with regards to the actual Tafseer. Much less with regards to the actual Tafseer. Inshallah ta'ala, in this program, as we can see, we will try to cover these main points, inshallah ta'ala. Some of the objective of this presentation: the fruits of studying Tafseer, the name meaning, the word Tafseer, and the meaning of the word Tafseer, the definition of Tafseer, the founder. Many times when we study a field, you study the founder. Who is the founder of that field? Who came about with that field of studies? And then some of the stages of Tafseer, some of the books of Tafseer, and general issues and matters that are covered in Tafseer. With regards to the objective of this presentation is not meant for us to actually study an actual Tafseer of a surah or anything, or even for us to memorize anything. That's not the main objective, but if that happens, inshallah ta'ala, is much better. But the main objective of this Tafseer program, or this presentation with regards to the introduction to the science of Tafseer, is for it to be a means of motivation for us to study Tafseer, and also for us to have an idea of what is out there when it comes to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to have some appreciation for this field of knowledge. And as you can see, I try to bring at least one Tafseer book. I wanted to bring more, but as you can see, this is just one Tafseer in is different volumes, about 26, 27 volumes. There is the volumes there, right? But it's just one author. And many people, including myself, when I first started to study, the only thing you know about was Tafseer ibn Kathir. And unfortunately, many people don't even know about Tafseer ibn Kathir. And also many people, they don't even know there's something exists that names Tafseer, explanation of the Quran. The most they know there's the Quran and the translation of the Quran. And it's good for us to expose these things to our children and so on. Let them know, have an idea of what is out there. And there is a means of seeking knowledge. The word seeking knowledge, talab al-ilm, as it is used in Arabic, talab al-ilm. Right? Talab, you seek something. And if you don't know that it exists, you're not going to seek it. You have many people, they are thrown back for years. Many people, they are complaining, they don't know what to do, they are bored. Right? Because they don't have a clue of what is out there to seek after. So the only way you're going to seek something is if you know and have a clue that it exists. You're not going to go fishing somewhere unless you know or you think there is fish existing in that place. And also, with regards to the fruits of studying tafsir, from the biggest fruits and benefits of studying tafsir is to understand the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is His message. And if you just think about this, imagine we have something with us that came from above 7 heavens, that came from the Lord of the worlds. You have something. People, they might boast they have a moon rock, something from the moon or something from Mars or Pluto or something like that. But we Muslims, we have something that came from way far than those things, from above 7 heavens. Right? The message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in its original form. And we are not eager to know what is in this message. And this tafsir we have in front of us, Tafseer al-Tabari, this is the oldest compilation of tafsir that we have with us. Imam al-Tabari, he passed away around 300 or something Hijri. From among the oldest tafsir. About 300 and something Hijri. Someone can verify that, inshallah ta'ala. So this is from the oldest compilation of tafsir in its full form that we have with us. We have narrations before that. And even if you read the tafsir of Imam Tabari, he's narrating from those who preceded him. And this is just one. And you have many, tons of other tafsir that exist. So imagine what is in this tafsir. What is it that the scholars, they explain? What is it they derive from the knowledge of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also from the fruits of studying tafsir is having khushu in our salah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentioned, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Right? The believers, they are successful. And who are these successful believers? The first description of them is that they have khushu' in their salah. And from the greatest means of having khushu' in your salah is for you to know what you are reading. And for you to know and understand, or at least have an idea of what you are hearing from the imam reciting. And you find that in Ramadan, those who know the Arabic language or have a clue about what the imam is reading, they will not get bored. They will not get bored in the Taraweeh, compared to those who doesn't have an idea of what is being recited. They are most likely to get a little bored or tired, especially if the imam maybe doesn't have a nice, beautiful recitation or so on. They're going to get tired fast. And from the fruits of studying tafsir is that it is a gateway to exploring an ocean of knowledge, sciences, history, and much more. When you study tafsir and you see the scholars, normally they said the best way for a scholar to exercise his knowledge is to write a tafsir. Everything he has to pour it into it. His knowledge about fiqh, knowledge about Arabic language, grammar, poetry. And if you take this Tafsir al-Tabari, for example, Tafsir bin Kathir, Qurtubi, Adwal Bayan from the contemporary tafsir, or Tahwir, or Tanwir, and so on, you find everything they poured into it. And you see that the real scholarship of that scholar, everything is being poured. His knowledge about fiqh, his knowledge about hadith. Many of them, they were scholars of hadith, like Ibn Kathir. You have some of them, yes, they were not scholars of hadith. And you find they're adding a lot of weak, fabricated hadith in their tafsir. You study tafsir, you find sciences with regards to worldly things, with regards to with regards to the nujum, the stars and the oceans and mountains and so on. Arabic grammar, you have some tafsir, their focus is on fiqh and so on, many things. Rather, you will even find amazing things in the books of tafsir. Stories of the people of the past, stories of the Israeliyat, we will cover a little. You will even find things that are ajib, strange. The river of life, and how someone, maybe he drank from the river of life and he lived forever. Right? That, of course, is not a true thing, but the point is, you're going to get exposed to a lot of things. You're going to get exposed to a lot of things just by studying tafsir. With regards to this name, tafsir, and we will not go through every single thing in every slide, and inshallah, as we mentioned at the end of the dawrah of this course, we will present a little notebook on what we covered, inshallah ta'ala. The science of tafsir, the word tafsir, this science or this field of study is generally called tafsir, and also the word ta'wil is used. And the word ta'wil, when it is used in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and the time of the companions, most of the time, if not all of the time, what is meant is the actual tafsir. Ta'wil and tafsir is just simile. Later on, there are differences. Today, when we say ta'wil, or if you read books and they mention ta'wil, it may vary. Right? It might not be the same thing. Especially when you study the book of Creed and Aqidah. When they talk about ta'wil, they talk about the dispraisable interpretation of things, especially the names and the attributes, right? Changing the meaning and interpreting it other than what it actually means. So generally, the word ta'wil is another name that is used to refer to tafsir. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said with regards to Ibn Abbas, Allahumma faqihhu fi din wa allimhu at-ta'wil. Oh Allah, give him the understanding of the deen, give him the fiqh of the deen, and teach him the ta'wil. Give him the understanding of the deen. Fiqh in the time of the Prophet ﷺ means understanding, not what we know of as fiqh, just ahkam. Everything is fiqh. Tafsir is fiqh. Jurisprudence is fiqh, hadith is fiqh, aqidah is fiqh, everything is fiqh in the terminology of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions. As for what we call fiqh, is a technical terminology, an istilah that came afterwards. وَعَلِّمْهُ التَّأْوِيلَ, and teach him the ta'wil, meaning teach him the tafsir. With regards to the linguistic meaning of the word tafsir, it came from the word fasr. Fasr, which means uncovering or kashf or making clear. And you can see clearly the link between the literal meaning of tafsir and between the technical meaning of tafsir. The word fasr, meaning to uncover something and to make clear. Tafsir, you're uncovering the meaning of the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and making it clear. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَلَا يَأْتُونَكَ بِمَثَلٍ إِلَّا جِئْنَاكَ بِالْحَقِّ وَأَحْسَنَ تَفْسِيرًا. They don't come to you with an example, a parable, an argument, except that we will come to you with the truth and what is better in tafsir. What do you mean better in tafsir? Not tafsir as we are talking here, but better with regards to making the argument clear, uncovering the evidence and uncovering the hujjah, being a better explanation of what they are trying to argue about. As for the word ta'wil, it comes from the word awl, which means to return or to go back. It means what something returns to or what something goes back to. As in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّاهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلِنُعَلِّمَهُ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ. And so that we can teach him the ta'wil of the ahadith. Ta'wil, that is translated as the explanation of events or the explanation of dreams, meaning what those dreams and those events goes back to, the reality that it goes back to. And in the story of Musa and Khidr, he said, after Khidr was doing strange things, and at the end when he explained what he was doing, he said ذَلِكَ تَأْوِيلُ مَا لَمْ تَسْطِعْ عَلَيْهِ صَبْرًا. That is the explanation, the interpretation of what you couldn't have patience about. Meaning this is the reality of what those things I did, it goes back to. This is the reality of what it went back to. And as for the technical meaning of tafsir, we all know when we say tafsir what we are referring to, but if you want to put it in words, this is an example of the definition mentioned by Az-Zarqashi. As for the founder of tafsir, as we know, every field of science, or not every field, but many fields of science, they have a founder, someone who came about with this field of science. Like you have the Arabic language, there is a founder. It didn't exist before. Arabic grammar. The Arabs, they were speaking naturally, so they were a founder when it comes to geography, algebra, and all of those things. They have a founder, someone who came about with this study. But when it comes to the tafsir of the Quran, there is no one founder. It was a natural thing that exists with the revelation itself. Because you find in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He Himself will explain the Quran. That is in reality tafsir. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would explain the Quran. Either he will explain it by himself without being asked, or he will explain it after being asked. The companions, they will go to him and they will ask him about things that are difficult with regards to its understanding, and so on. And then afterwards, so it was something that generally existed naturally as a field, as a study, but it was not something that was intended separately. It was part of life with the Quran and with revelation. But then in the time of the companions, like Ibn Abbas and Ibn Mas'ud, and Ali radiallahu anhu and so on, but especially in the time of Abdullah ibn Abbas, or not in the time of Abdullah ibn Abbas, to be more specific, with Abdullah ibn Abbas. Abdullah ibn Abbas, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, they lived in the time of the other companions also. But with these companions, the field of tafsir, or as a science, it started to make a more visual or visible, what's the word? A more apparent show. It started to appear more apparently. Because they will sit just to teach tafsir as a subject, as a study by itself. But in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there is no report that say he would sit just for the sake of explaining the Quran. Because their need for the explanation was less than those who came after them. Because they were witnessing the revelation. They were seeing when it's revealing, why it was revealing. They knew the Arabic language in general. They were the people of the Arabic language. They had no issue understanding the Arabic language, with the exception maybe of a few vocabularies, and that would vary from companion to companion. Many of the vocabularies in the Quran, it was not widespread and known the way we may know it. You ask, for example, إِذَا السَّمَاءُ انْفَطَرَتْ. Many of us, we read fatarat, mean inshaqqat, and so on. Right? To split, to open up. But this word, fatarat, it was not known widespread amongst the companions. As Abdullah ibn Mas'ud or Abdullah ibn Abbas, he mentioned that he didn't know the meaning of this word until he saw two Bedouin debating over who dug the well. So one of them is arguing, my father dug it, the other one is saying, no, my father dug it, and they're using the word fatara. And that is when he realized the meaning of the word fatara. And there are different examples. The next thing we will deal with, inshallah ta'ala, is the stages of tafsir. The stages of tafsir, meaning at various stages that tafsir went through with regards to the interpreter, those who are interpreting the Quran. Excuse me. Now when you're looking at the stage of tafsir, you can look at it from various angles. You can look at it from a historical angle. You can look at it from the angle of, what you call it? The angle of its compilation and so on. But in this discussion here, we will deal with it from the angle of the interpreter, those who used to interpret the Quran, or the actual tafsir. The actual tafsir, the different stage on which the Quran was interpreted or explained. And the reason why some of the scholars, or from the reason we can say why some of the scholars, they list out this here as various stages, is because each one of these stages, it is kind of historical because it took place different time. And also each stage in general, it is a vast different contribution to the interpretation of the Quran compared to the previous stage. So we have, in general, we have the tafsir of the Quran by the Quran, the tafsir of the Quran by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the tafsir of the Quran by the companions, the tafsir of the Quran by the tabi'een, and then after that, the scholars after the tabi'een in general. Tafsir of the Quran by the Quran itself. Now what is meant by tafsir of the Quran by the Quran itself is that within the Quran, you will find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He Himself will explain the Quran. Verses will come, right? And then the next verse or verses afterwards will explain what was meant by previous verse, and so on. For example, and we will give example shortly, but before that, it should be noted that there is a difference between tafsir of the Quran by the Quran, tafsir of Quran lil Quran, and the tafsir of the Quran with the Quran. Right? Now, many times, when you study books or books on this topic, they will not differentiate between these two. But the best thing is to differentiate. It's two different things. You have tafsir of the Quran by the Quran itself. Tafsir al-Quran lil-Quran. That is when the Quran itself clearly explains what is meant. Al-Qari'ah, mal-Qari'ah. The Qari'ah, what is the Qari'ah? وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْقَارِعَةُ. What to make you know what is the Qari'ah? يَوْمَ يَكُونُ النَّاسُ كَالْفَرَاشِ الْمَبْثُوثِ. Right? The day when the people will be like scattered moth. Right? The Quran clearly explains that this is the meaning of Al-Qari'ah. وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ, by the heavens and by the Tariq. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الطَّارِقِ. What will make you know what is الطارق? النَّجْمُ الثَّاقِبِ. It is the radiant star, the bright star. So the Quran clearly tells you what is الطارق. So that is tafsir of the Quran by the Quran. Tafsir al-Quran lil-Quran. But then you have the tafsir of the Quran with the Quran. Now what is this? This is now when someone used the Quran to explain the Quran. And you find this in the other stages. You find the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he explained the Quran with the Quran. Like when they asked him, when they went and they complained about, or they went and they tell him about the issue, or the fear they have with the verse, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَلَمْ يَلْبِسُوا إِيمَانَهُمْ بِظُلْمٍ أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمُ الْأَمْنُ وَهُمْ مُؤْتَدُونَ. Those who believe and they haven't mixed their iman with dhulm, with oppression, right? أُولَٰئِكَ لَهُمُ, they are the one who will receive safety and peace, and they are the one who will be guided. So they went and they complained to the Prophet ﷺ, or not complained, but they went with an ishkal, with a problem, or they're complaining or saying that which of us have not oppressed ourselves, right? they're seeing that dhulm there refer to the literal dhulm, oppression of a person to himself, oppressing your brothers and your sisters and so on. Everyone, they oppress themselves at least. Right? By committing sin, doing wrong things, you're oppressing yourself. So Allah is saying if you don't, who believe and they haven't done any oppression, they are the one who will receive safety and they are the one who will be guided. So they fear now none of us will receive the safety from the punishment of Allah, none of us will be guided. All of us have done some form of oppression. So the Prophet ﷺ, he tell them that that is not what is meant. And then he quote the verse in Surah Luqman, Inna shirka la dhulmun azim. That indeed shirk is a great oppression. So here the Prophet ﷺ, he used the Quran to explain another part of the Quran. Now when it is done by the Prophet ﷺ, you have no issue. You know it is revelation also. Right? There is no doubt that that is the correct meaning. Now when it is done by a companion, and there are differences of opinion, if there is no difference of opinion, there is no issue also. Now let's go to the scholars after the companion. Now they can be right and they can be wrong. When it comes to the scholars after the companion, right? A scholar, he read this verse and he said the meaning is explained by this verse. He could be wrong in linking the two verses together. So that is, they are using the Quran to explain in the Quran. There is not the Quran explaining itself. And this is important to note. Right? When a scholar, he is explaining a verse and explaining it with another verse, many people, they are thinking that this here is the Quran explaining itself. No, it's the scholar using the Quran to explain itself. So if you find an opposition, doesn't mean that that person who is opposing is wrong. Because it's not as if he is opposing the explanation of the Quran for the Quran. Rather, he is opposing that scholar who is interpreting the Quran using other verses of the Quran. Maybe that scholar see these verses does not apply to this verse. Catch the difference? So it's important to know that there is a difference between these two. Because one of them is revelation, you can't go against, and the other one is ijtihad. Right? The other one is ijtihad, is trying to understand the Quran using the Quran. Now some examples, as we mentioned, Al-Qari'ah, Mal-Qari'ah, Wa-Sama'i, Wa-Tariq, we mentioned those two examples. Now the second stage. We're going to come to it, inshallah. At the end, we're going to have a question, inshallah. We're going to leave some time at the end. Tafseer of the Quran by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is the second stage. And as we mentioned in general, the companions, now the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a whole is a tafsir for the Quran. The sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in general as a whole is a tafsir for the Quran. Allah commands us, wa aqimus salah wa atuz zakah, establish prayers, give zakah. There is no detail when to say Allahu Akbar, takbir is, right? So the sunnah itself is an explanation of the Quran, or a general explanation of what came in the Quran. Then you have specific issues. We mentioned the issue where the companions, they went and they asked the Prophet ﷺ about something that was bothering them with regards to the verse. You have instances, the Prophet ﷺ, he himself will just explain the Quran. For example, لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةً. In Surah Yunus, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, for those who do good, they will have al-husna and they will have a ziyada. Al-husna means they will have, literally means they will have the best reward, which is Jannah. Right? And they will have a ziyada, which is something extra. The Prophet ﷺ, he explained the ziyada's meaning, looking at the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So that's the Prophet ﷺ explaining the Quran. And there are narrations where he explained al-husna to mean the Jannah. There are some wording of the hadith that say that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that al-husna is the Jannah and the ziyada is the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I'm not sure the authenticity of those wording, but the wording I came across is لِلَّذِينَ أَحْسَنُوا الْحُسْنَى وَزِيَادَةٌ is that he explained what is the meaning of ziyada, meaning looking at the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The third level is the tafsir of the Quran by the companions. Now, with regards to the tafsir of the Quran by the Prophet ﷺ, there is a difference of opinion. Did the Prophet ﷺ explain all of the Quran, or he didn't explain all of the Quran? Now, there is no authentic narration that the Prophet ﷺ explained all of the Quran, right? Or there won't be any difference. If we had those narration, or we had narration with us showing the Prophet ﷺ explaining the Quran from the beginning to the end, then there won't be any difference. Everyone would agree the Prophet ﷺ explained the Quran. That would have been the best tafsir. Right? But the view that many scholars they choose, and what seems to be more accurate, is the Prophet ﷺ, he did not explain all of the Quran the way we understand tafsir, or even going through the words and the meaning and those things. Because the need for it didn't exist. The need for it didn't exist. So, there were no need, and also the companions, they were witnessing the revelation. They know why it was revealed and in everything. So the need for it didn't exist. But after the Prophet ﷺ passed away, now you had the tabi'een, and even some of the companions who weren't around most of the time, they had a need to know what was meant. Because many verses, you can't understand it unless you study the tafsir. Period. You won't understand it until you know why it was revealed. For example, one famous example used in Surah Nisa, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا فَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا بَيْنَ فَإِنْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا. The verse in Surah Nisa about the orphans. The general meaning is that if you fear that you will not be just to the orphans, then marry what you wish from amongst the women, either marry in 2 or 3 or 4, and if you fear that you won't be just, then marry just 1. Now, what is the link between being just to the orphans and marrying women? You will not understand that period unless you know why that verse revealed. Right? So the people who came after, and even some of the companions who weren't present, they went to Aisha radiallahu anha and asked about this verse, and her nephew was among them. What was it? وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تُقْسِطُوا فِي الْيَتَامَى فَانْكِحُوا مَا طَابَ لَكُم مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ. Right? If you fear that you will not be just with regards to the orphans, then marry what you wish, or marry what you are pleased with from amongst the women, meaning those women who are not orphans. So then in the time of the companion, the need for the tafsir increased. And like that, every generation, the need for the tafsir increased. And in our time, the need for the tafsir is even much more higher. So in the beginning, like if you look in the time of the companions, the words, the actual linguistic words they explained were few compared to what was explained by the Prophet ﷺ. Then in the time of the tabi'een, that increased a little more. And they call it the gharib of the Quran, right? The strange words of the Quran. So what was strange in the time of the companions, right? What was strange in the time of the tabi'een was not strange in the time of the companions. And then what was strange in the time after the tabi'een and in the early 4th generation, right? Was not strange before that. Now for us, the entire Quran is strange. So we need to explain every single word. The entire Quran is strange for most of us. If you're not speaking Arabic language, more so the entire Quran is strange. So we see why there is need for a variation in the tafsir by generation after generation. And also, the tafsir of the Quran and the tafsir of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those two period or stages, they are the main tafsir. They are the main stages of tafsir. So when, in the time of the companion, they will only add to what was not explained by the Prophet ﷺ or by the Quran itself. And then similarly, the tabi'een, they will add to what was not explained by the companions, nor the Prophet, nor the Quran. So now when we are talking about tafsir of the Quran by the companions, if someone went to the companion and asked him what's the tafsir of this verse, and he give them the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where the Prophet explained this verse, in reality, that's not the tafsir of the Quran by that companion. He's just narrating to you the tafsir of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The companions, as we said, when they are interpreting the Quran, they rely on their understanding of, we said about when they will explain the Quran with the Quran itself first, meaning if there is a verse explain another verse, then they will, if that doesn't exist, move to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then if that doesn't exist, they will use their own ijtihad. Now when they are using their own ijtihad, it's not for anyone to just use your ijtihad, meaning use your understanding, your reasoning, and so on. But you have to have tools in order to understand and explain the Quran. And the companions, they were the people who are the most equipped in explaining the Quran. Because they knew the Arabic language by nature. The next 2 generations after the companions, the people had to learn the Arabic language. Right? About 200 Hijri. They want anyone who are learning Arabic naturally. Everyone had to learn it. Right? Had to learn it from a teacher. So they had the Arabic language. Many of them were scholars and they knew about the poetry of the Arabs. And when they will be asked about a verse or a word, they will narrate poetry. Why they will narrate poetry? So that you will understand it. They will say this word was used by such and such poet. And that's the same meaning. The same meaning it was used by that poet is the same meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intend, and so on. And also because of their knowledge about surrounding events and the reason for revelation and so on, all of that they will use when they are explaining the Quran. Now, it's something to know that we will get into briefly is some of the companions, they may narrate Isra'iliyat from the likes of Ka'b al-Ahbar and Wahb ibn Munabbih and Abdullah ibn Salam. Now, why we mention this point with regards to the tafsir of the companion. Now, this here can actually be a separate topic, Isra'iliyat by itself. But its appearance is from this stage of tafsir. Its appearance is from this stage of tafsir. From the companions, they would narrate some of the Isra'iliyat. Then it starts to increase. The tabi'een who came after them, they will narrate even more. And then those who came after them, even more. And even the scholars who come later on, even more. You will find a lot of Isra'iliyat in the books of tafsir. And the scholars, they vary with regards to whether they approve of it or they don't approve. Meaning approve of using the Isra'iliyat. You have some of, like Ahmad Shakir, he was very strict and he was against even mentioning the Isra'iliyat. And he criticized Ibn Kathir for doing so in his tafsir. That is where you find in his book, in his mulakhas, his summary for Ibn Kathir. Right? He take out all of the Isra'iliyat. He threw them out and he just concise on what was actually had to do with the actual tafsir of the Quran. But some of the companions, they were known to narrating the Isra'iliyat. Now, why is it important to know that? Because, as we know, when it comes to understanding the deen, the companion, they may tell us things that has to do with the unseen. Right? Has to do with the unseen. Rulings that has to do with the unseen. Events that has to do with the unseen. Now, if it is known that this companion, he will narrate a lot from the Isra'iliyat, right? Then, you will treat the Israeliyat as a Israeliyat, with regards to the ruling of Israeliyat. Now what is the ruling of Israeliyat? The Prophet ﷺ, he said, حدثوا عن بني إسرائيل ولا حرج ومن كذب علي متعمدا فليتبوأ مقعده من النار. Narrate from Bani Israel without any problem, any fear. Is okay to narrate from Bani Israel, but then he warned, whosoever lie about me or lie on me deliberately, his place is going to be in the fire of hell. Now there's a principle in hadith, our narrations. If a companion narrates something that has to do with the unseen, that narration, or has to do with something that it can't be from his understanding and intellect, it got to be revelation. That's the only way he can know this thing. He said the virtue of praying Salatul Duha is so and so. But he didn't say the Prophet said. But the only way he's going to know the virtue of praying Salatul Duha, it got to be revelation. So the narrations of the companion that are the likes of that, it has the ruling of the hadith al-marfu, those hadith that are narrated from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if a companion said something, but he didn't say the Prophet said, but what he said, he could not know that except by revelation, then we treat it as if the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said it. But there are a condition to that. One of the conditions is that that companion, he can't be known to narrating from Israeliyat, and what he narrated, it's not possible that it came from the Israeliyat. So if the companion, he's known to narrate from Israeliyat, among them is Ibn Abbas, right? It's known that he would narrate from the Israeliyat. So if he narrates something that has to do with the stories of the prophets or events of the past, right? And he narrated from himself and didn't say the Prophet said this, we will not treat it as a hadith. Right? It's Israeliyat, we treat it as an Israeliyat. Some of those who, they will narrate from some of the famous individuals, that the companions and those who came after them, the tabi'in, they will narrate from, is Ka'b al-Ahbar. Ka'b al-Ahbar, Wahb ibn Munabbih, Ka'b al-Ahbar. It is said that he accepted Islam during the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, or during the time of Abu Bakr. During one of the two, during the time of Umar or Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Ka'b al-Ahbar. But he was born in the days of Jahiliyyah. So he was born and the Prophet ﷺ was alive, but he never accepted Islam. But he was from among the scholars of the Jews. Also Wahb ibn Munabbih, he was born in the time of the Prophet ﷺ and accepted Islam in the time, he was born around 34 Hijri, around 34 Hijri, Wahb ibn Munabbih, and he also, his family, it is said that his father or his family, they were scholars of the Jews or the Jewish religion, or he had links to the Jewish religion. That is how he had knowledge about their stories. And Abdullah ibn Salam, we all know Abdullah ibn Salam radiallahu anh, from the companions, and he was from the Jews of Banu Qaynuqa. Banu Qaynuqa, when the Prophet ﷺ made hijrah to Medina, he accepted Islam. And the famous story where he accepted Islam and then he told the Prophet ﷺ to test the Jews about him. The famous story of Abdullah ibn Salam, you can refer back to that. We are closing in on the time and we have about 5 more slides to go. So we will be we summarize inshallah. Have time? Okay, inshallah. For the 5 minutes to Maghrib. So inshallah. The tafsir of the Quran by the tabi'in. And as we mentioned, the same thing we said about the companions, the same thing we can say about the tabi'in. When the scholars among the tabi'in, if they are explaining the Quran, and they don't have a verse to explain it with, or they don't have a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ, and then we add a third thing, they don't have narration from the companions, they will resort to their understanding. And also they will use the tools for explaining the Quran. They will use the tools for explaining the Quran. And this here is a crucial stage, is a different stage also Because the tabi'een, who are they explaining it to? The atba' at-tabi'een, those who came after them. And obviously, those who came after them, they will be more ignorant of what took place in the time of revelation. Now, these tabi'een, they lived with the companions. Many of them, rather, they lived during the Islam, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but they didn't accept Islam. As we mentioned with Ka'ab al-Ahbar, right? They accepted Islam after the death of the Prophet ﷺ, but they lived. So they were seeing things. So the tabi'een, many of them, they saw things that took place. They lived during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and at least they lived with the people who lived during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that is the companion. So their knowledge and understanding will be of a higher level compared to those who come after them. And also, they are from the age where the Arabic language, or they lived during that age where the Arabic language was still preserved and so on in general terms. So their understanding of the Arabic, the understanding of the Quran will be at a general higher level than those who come afterwards, will be independent of them for their explanation. And during this time, during the time of the tabi'een with the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, the entire Quran was generally explained. And the evidence for that, take Tabari for example, take Ibn Kathir for example, almost every verse you will find that he gives the view of a companion or a tabi'een. Almost every verse, if not every verse, you will find that this was the view of a companion or the view of a tabi'een. Now, in the time of the tabi'een, and the tabi'een and their time and the time of the companion there's a merge, because they were the students of the companion. But there were three main schools of thought when it comes to tafsir. Three means, or not, school of thought is not the best word, because school of thought necessitates difference of opinion, but it's not necessarily the case. But there are three main schools of tafsir. You had the school of Abdullah ibn Abbas in Makkah, and from his students was Sa'id ibn Jubair, Mujahid, Ikrima, Tawus ibn Kaysan, Ata ibn Abi Rabah. And these are famous names. Open Ibn Kathir, even the English, you will find that he will say this was the view of Sa'id ibn Jubair, this was the view of Mujahid, this was the view of Ikrima. So now it's important to have an idea of these names. When he said this is the view of this person, you know who is he referring to. Meaning these views go back to the Salaf, go back to the Tabi'een. Now, if you get into the benefit of knowing that, is a different topic. Among those benefits, when you know these are the views of Tabi'een, you will know what exists in the time of the Salaf. When someone comes 1400 years afterwards, right, and they may say something didn't exist among the Salaf, and Ibn Kathir said this was the view of Ikrima. If you don't know who is Ikrima, or you don't know who is Sa'id ibn Jubair and Mujahid, right, you will not realize that these views exist in the time of the Salaf, in the time of the Tabi'een, and they are Salafi views, if you want to put it like that. And then you had the school in Medina under Ubay ibn Ka'ab, right, from the Qurra, in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And amongst his students was Zayd ibn Aslam, Abul Aliya Muhammad ibn Ka'ab, and also the school in Iraq, the school of Ibn Mas'ud, right? And under the line or the lineage, if you want to say, of Ibn Mas'ud came Abu Hanifa, right? They are connected. And as we know, this Imam Abu Hanifa, his school of thought, there was a lot of reasoning. And that even took place in the time of Ibn Mas'ud. That methodology of a lot of reasoning and so on, it was something that stands out from even the school of Ibn Mas'ud with regards to explanation of the Quran. And from his students was Alqamah and Masruq and Al-Aswad ibn Ziyad and Hassan al-Basri, famous Tabi'een, and Qatada. And you will find these names. You open Ibn Kathir, open Tabari, Baghawi, you find these names, they are mentioned. So it's important to know, have a clue of these names. Even if you don't remember them, write them down or review it. So when you come across the name, it clicks. Okay, this was from amongst the tabi'een and so on. And then after the tabi'een, you have tafsir. It took a different level. Now after the tabi'een was the atba' at-tabi'een. But the scholars, or some of them, they didn't make that a different school before the following generation to come. Meaning a different stage, Because during the atba' tabi'een, even though they were within the first 3 generation, right? خَيْرُ الْقُرُونِ قَرْنِ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ. Right? So the atba' tabi'een, the scholars right after the tabi'een, they were from amongst the first 3 generation. That is the generation of the 4 madhahib, Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi'i, Ahmad. That was that generation there. And Bukhari and Muslim and so on. They were all close in that generation. But from the tabi'een, after them, the tafsir started to take a different shape. Now, because remember we said during the tabi'een, in general the tafsir were completed. So now you have a lot of views. So those who came after them, what they were doing is not really adding views, even though that did happen. You had the views being added, but most of what was happening is the likes of what happened after the 4 madhahib. After the 4 madhahib, you didn't really find new views. But what you find is choosing between the views. And that same thing happened with regards to tafsir. Now, it's something to note when we say views. When it comes to interpreting the Quran and difference of opinion and so on, it's not like the 4 madhahib, where you have a lot of difference of opinion and so. The differences of opinion with regards to the understanding of the Quran and what was meant by this verse is very few. And even many times when you find this scholar say this means this, and this one say it means this, and it's 2 different things, both of them are correct. Because they are explaining the verse from different angles. And that's why you will find Ibn Kathir, even Tabari, who came very close after them, they will say what the correct view is, all of these are correct. Because they are explaining it with from different angles, different wording and so on. And Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in his Muqaddimah, his introduction to Tafsir, he mentioned these things, and he mentioned a little insight of how to deal with tafsir, and it's a good book to study. But generally, after these 3 generations, it is not for anyone to come and then differ with these generations. Right? After these 3 generations, it's not for anyone to come and differ with them in a way that it contradicts what they came with. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that my ummah, it will never unite upon something that is batil, that something is wrong. Well, you can come with something that adds to it. And we will give an example, insha'Allah ta'ala. For example, in the verse, وَالْخَيْلَ وَالْبِغَالَ وَالْحَمِيرَ لِتَرْكَبُوهَا وَالزِّينَ وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Right? The khayl and the bighal, the horse and the mules and the donkeys, they are for you to ride, and they are beautification for you. And we create for you that which you do not know. Now, all of the tafsir before, they mention various things. Right? Referring to things in Jannah that you're going to receive in Jannah, and the likes of those things that you're going to see, that Allah is going to create for you that you don't know about. But then in our time, some scholars, they say what is meant by this, and He will create for you that which you do not know. Right? It's referring to those contemporary means of transportation that we have, the planes and the car and the motorcycle and so on. Allah is telling that He's going to create that which. Now, if Allah had used terminologies that the companion didn't know about, it wouldn't serve the purpose. Now, this view that it refers to the airplane and the car and the bus and the motorcycle does not contradict the fact that Allah is going to create for us in Jannah what we do not know about. So there is no contradiction. Right? So when there is an addition, once there is no contradiction, it may be accepted. Now, why some of the scholars, they say that this most likely is what is meant are the number one, then the other things are secondary meaning. Because Allah is talking about what here? He's talking about means of transportation, the donkey and the horse and the mules, means of transportation. He mentioned this in the context of means of transportation. So it's most likely that what is meant, Allah is creating for you that which you do not know, or Allah is creating that which you do not know, referring to those means of transportation that is going to come. That is going to come. So this is an example where you may have an addition to the tafsir, but it doesn't contradict what came before it of the tafsir. And then the scholars from amongst their variation in tafsir, after being choosing and harmonizing between views, they have different roads in which they take with regards to explaining the Quran. Some of the scholars, their main focus is explaining the meaning of the words. Explaining the meaning of the words, what is meant, when it was revealed, why it was revealed, and the ruling concerning it. Some other scholars, they focus on the rulings. The meaning not so much, but they make a lot of focus. When they come across a verse that talks about salah, they will mention the different ruling, the different madhahib. When they come across verse about inheritance and zakah and everything, they will pour all of their fiqh ruling in it, mentioning the different madhahib. And a famous example of that is Tafseer al-Qurtubi. Tafseer al-Qurtubi. Then you have some scholars who deal with the tafsir from a linguistic point of view, mentioning the balagh and the eloquence of the Quran, and the linguistic of the Quran, using Arabic terminologies and so on. From amongst famous example with regards to the eloquence and so, you have the tafsir al-Zamakhshari, which is a tafsir of a Mu'tazila. Right? Is an innovator tafsir, as they say. But there are the scholars, they benefit from it, and it's not a tafsir that is recommended for people to read by themselves, or even students of knowledge. Rather, some scholars of Ahlul Sunnah, they just, after they see some of the things that Zamakhshari mentioned in his tafsir, they left it off totally. But scholars, they did make use of his tafsir and the linguistics of his tafsir, and in our time, tafsir Ibn Ashur. From amongst the things he focused in his tafsir, and he's a contemporary tafsir, but the likes of his tafsir never preceded. In general terms, not in the idea, but in general terms, his book of tafsir, everyone, they make reference to his book of tafsir because of the beauty and how he used the language to explain the Quran. Okay, so we are about to finish, inshallah. With regards, okay, now we're going to end, inshallah ta'ala, with some of the things that you will study in tafsir. Some of the matters and issues you will come across in tafsir briefly. And each one of these things is a topic by itself. Each one of these things is a topic by itself. So I didn't give any detailed explanation of them. And then inshallah we will mention some of the books of tafsir, and then we will close inshallah ta'ala. When you're studying tafsir, and those of us who maybe you went to classes of tafsir, or you were part of the tafsir class that preceded, you will hear of these terminology, asbab al-nuzul, makkiyah, madaniyah, right? You will hear about the virtues of surah, munasabat al-ayat, relation between verses, ahkam, nasikh, mansukh, and the likes of those terminologies. And these are important terminologies to know when you are studying tafsir. You have Makki and Madani. When you are studying tafsir, they will mention this surah is Makkiyah, this surah is Madaniyah. This surah, there is a difference of opinion. Is it Makkiyah or Madaniyah? Or half of it is Madaniyah, half of it is Makkiyah. From amongst the surahs that there is big difference of opinion is Surah Al-Hajj. Surah Al-Hajj. So much so that some of the scholars, they say that this is a special, very special surah from different angle. It has 2 sajda in it. Half of it is Makki and half of it is Madani. Rather, some of the scholars, they said, this surah is why it has so much Makki and so much Madani in it, is because the Makki verse that is in it was revealed just before the Prophet ﷺ left Makkah, and the Madani was revealed just after he left Makkah. So it's at the borderline. So you have surahs like that. So what is meant by Makkiyah and what is meant by Madaniyah? What will come to our mind is that Makkiyah, revealed in Makkah, Madaniyah, revealed in Medina. But the most famous interpretation or definition for Makkiyah and Madaniyah is that Makkiyah, what was revealed before the Hijrah. And Madaniyah, what was revealed after the Hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. So now a verse that was revealed when the Prophet ﷺ made Hajj is what? When the Prophet ﷺ made Hajj, which is obviously in Makkah, it will be Madaniyah, because the Prophet ﷺ made Hajj in the 8th year of Hijrah, right? Which is in Medina, when he was living in Medina, or after the Hijrah, obviously. So if a verse revealed in Makkah, after the Hijrah is considered Madaniyah. And then you have Asbab and Nuzul. When they mention this is the sabab of Nuzul. Asbab and Nuzul meaning the reason why this verse was revealed. And the definition of it is clear. You can give a lot of examples. Why a verse was revealed, an event surrounding this verse that caused it to reveal, or why Allah sent this verse. It may reveal, there might be an event taking place without an issue, but Allah reveal some guidelines concerning that revelation. There may be an event that the companions, they are in trouble, and there is a verse that reveal concerning that. For example, with regards to Surah Anfal, many of it concerning the battle of Badr. Some of the verses in Surah Imran, towards the end, many of it concerning the battle of Uhud. Right? Now those verses reveal after the battle or during the battle as general guidelines. Right? So they were revealed concerning that situation. Then you have verses that were revealed, there was a need, the companions, they were in trouble. Like for example what? When they were in their expedition, their battle, their expedition, and Aisha radiallahu anha, she lost her necklace, and the entire army looking for their necklace, and they're out of water, and the time for Salah comes. Now they're in trouble. So much so, Abu Bakr, he went and he rebuked Aisha. And the Prophet ﷺ was sleeping, and he was poking her and blaming her that she caused the entire army to stay back. The Prophet ﷺ kept the entire army looking for the necklace of his wife. Right? If we get into the tafsir that, we're going to get distracted and go too far. So we left that. Right? So Abu Bakr, he was poking her. No water, you cause all of this upon us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the verses of tayammum. The verses of tayammum. Then you have the verses of alcohol was revealed concerning alcohol and so on. Then ma'ani gharib al-kalimat. Now you might read tafsir, they said this is a gharib, the gharib of the surah. In the beginning of the tafsir, they may mention the gharib of the surah. What is meant? The strange words for them, not for us. Right? The strange word meaning those words that are not generally used in Arabic and is mentioned. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the scholars, they will mention it. And when it comes to the dictionaries of Arabic language, the force of those dictionaries really are narrations with regards to the meaning of words. It had to do with the gharib of the hadith and the gharib of the Quran. That was the first thing that the scholars, they focus on. The strange words that were in the hadith and the Quran. Strange meaning, not widely used. Then virtues of verses and surah, like you have the virtue of Ayat al-Kursi, the virtue of the three kuls, the mu'awwidhatayn, and so on. You will find all of these things in the tafsir. Munasabat al-ayat, link between verses. You have an entire tafsir. Nazm al-Durar, right? An entire tafsir, maybe the length like this here. And the focus was to show the relation and the link between the verses and the surahs to each other. Nazm al-Durar. Now those are obviously ijtihad, right? They're ijtihad. The scholars, is not Allah says that this verse came after this verse because of this, but the scholars, they use their ijtihad to find the relationship and link, and you will find amazing thing when you study some of the relationships. Some of it might be far-fetched to our intellect and so on, but at the end it's ijtihad. And ahkam and nasikh and mansukh. Nasikh and mansukh meaning abrogation. A verse was revealed for a specific time, a specific event, then another verse was revealed, changing the ruling or abrogating the ruling. Now this here, important to note, Krishna might come and say, that means Allah didn't know. Right? But doesn't mean that Allah didn't know. Rather, it's not because Allah didn't know. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He knows everything, and that is why there is nasikh and mansukh. He knows that for this period of time, this ruling is suitable. Then there need to be a gradual adjustment. And that's why the ruling has to be changed. Famous example is how alcohol was prohibited. First, Allah just to stay away from alcohol in the time of salah so you can hear what? You can understand what you are saying. يَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا تَقْرَبُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَأَنْتُمْ سُكَارَى حَتَّى تَعْلَمُوا مَا تَقُولُونَ. O you who believe, do not come close to salah until you know that which you are saying. What's the reason why it was revealed? Ali radiallahu anhu, he said that Abdurrahman ibn Auf invited them for a meal, and he poured alcohol for them, and then he was reading. Then time for salah come, and he was reading, قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ وَنَحْنُ نَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ. He said, O you who disbelieve, we do not worship that which you worship, and we are worshipping that which you worship. Right? So he mixed up the meaning. We are worshipping that which you are. Of course, they are not worshipping that which the disbelievers are worshipping. So Allah revealed His verse concerning alcohol. He didn't say that it's haram to drink alcohol. He said, just don't drink it when it's time for, if you're going to be drunk for salah. And then the prohibition came afterwards. When the prohibition came to stay away from alcohol, it abrogates the verses that preceded, that indicates that alcohol is permissible. Now with regards to the books of Tafseer, there are many books of Tafseer, many that reached us, many that didn't reach us. And Ibn Taymiyyah in his time, he said that he read 100 Tafseer when he was debating with some of the innovators or those who oppose him. He said he read 100 Tafseer, 100 Tafseer he read. So imagine that is in his time. So imagine the library of Tafseer. And as we mentioned this here, the one that we have in front of us, Tafseer, this is Tafseer al-Tabari. Tafseer al-Tabari, which is the first Tafseer, the oldest Tafseer that we have with us. Everyone who came after al-Tabari depend upon al-Tabari for his Tafseer, and he's known as the, what do you call it, the father of Mufassirin. Right? Everyone, they came after him depending upon al-Tabari. You have a Durar al-Manthur. This is a collection of Tafseer narrations. Tafseer al-Baghawi. You have contemporary Tafseer like Tafseer by different scholars, Adwal, Bayan, Tafseer ibn Ashur, and so on. But the library of Tafseer is huge. The library of Tafseer is huge. From among the most famous is Tafseer Ibn Kathir. And in English, the Tafseer Ibn Kathir is present. And also the Tafseer of Sheikh As-Sa'di is also present. So there are lots of Tafseer, inshallah ta'ala. We will end with this. And as we said, the main purpose of this presentation was to just have an insight. The main purpose is to have an insight, to know what is there concerning the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in knowledge, to benefit us from that which He taught us, to increase us in sincerity. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us steadfast upon His deen. هذا وصلى الله على نبينا محمد وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.